And to your question, what's the typical fraudster? This is the disturbing answer. Anybody, like any one of us.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Fremming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rise and Stride. With me today is Kelly Richmond Pope, a forensic accountant and university professor with a love of storytelling. Kelly is a professor of forensic accounting at DePaul University in Chicago and is a nationally recognized expert in risk, forensic accounting, and white-collar crime research. She also is a Becker CPA exam national instructor, as well as an award-winning educator, researcher, author, and award-winning documentary filmmaker. Named by the AICPA and CPA Practice Advisor as one of its top 25 most powerful women in accounting in 2020, Kelly's expertise lies in understanding and identifying financial fraud risk within financial statements, assessing corporate culture, and compliance systems designed to confront internal control challenges. Wow, Kelly, I cannot wait to dig in with all of this with you today. Your background is fascinating and impressive, and just thank you for being here with us today.
I appreciate having the opportunity. So thank you for having me.
I read your book and I couldn't put it down. It was just fascinating. So every question that we have today, I'm just really looking forward to hearing your insights. So with the first question, I would say, in the book, you tell so many compelling stories. So maybe you can start out telling your story or your journey, how you were CPA and then kind of got into this life of just focusing on fraud.
Sure. Well, my CPA journey is a little different than most. So I took my first accounting class in high school, and it was then when I realized that I felt like the smartest person in the room is a person that understands the money. And so I said, I want to be that person. So I want to be the CFO. Yeah, it's okay to be the CEO. No harm. no harm against being a CEO. But I was like, well, I want to be a CFO. And so I took my first accounting class in ninth grade. And then in my sophomore year, I took another accounting class, and then I took economics. And I realized that I really liked accounting. So when I went to college, I graduated from North Carolina A&T State University. And my father was a business school dean and business school dean and a college president. And so he had a PhD in operations research. So he got his PhD from Purdue University. So I had always grown up really wanting to be just like my dad. My mother was a guidance school counselor. So both of my parents were in education. So that's all that I knew. And so what I really liked about what I noticed with my parents was the ability to create a legacy of your work. So, it was different than just having a traditional job where you go work, you get paid, and you go home. But like you sort of get to feed into people when you're an educator. So I wanted to be the second Dr. Richmond. So that Richmond is my maiden name. So I went and got my PhD from Virginia Tech. And so graduated. And my first job out of my PhD program was at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And it's there where I realized that I wanted to be different. Like I've always been a little bit different. I was the youngest person in the PhD program for a really long time because I had gone straight through school. I was a member of the PhD project when I was going through the whole process. And again, I was the youngest person because no one at that time had ever gone straight through school. So they were like, how old are you? Like 23? Like you're a kid. So there were people in the program that were like the age of my mother. So they embraced me, but I've always sort of been like this outlier. So I guess that's been my story really throughout of how can I do something a little bit different and a little bit unexpected and really to be more memorable. So that's really what started me doing. One, I was fascinated with fraud and that type of research, but I wanted my research to have an impact. And so often academics sit in their bubbles and they do their research and they share the research with each other and it has no impact on the world. And I didn't want to be that type of academic. And so I wanted my voice to be heard. And I knew that I had to do like the traditional academic publishing to keep my job, but I wanted to figure out could I have an impact. So that's really where the idea of filmmaking, specifically documentary filmmaking, came into play. Because if you think about it, documentary filmmaking is a wonderful learning opportunity. It's factually based, but it's rooted in storytelling. So I looked at that as a way to merge my research and just my love for TV, the arts, film. And so I did a film fellowship program, and that is really what started the way that people really know about me, which is through the filmmaking. So All the Queen's Horses is the documentary that I produced back in 2017. And I can tell you that that was probably one of the more life-changing projects ever, because it has had it's just such a huge impact on the world. And that's really what I wanted. So yeah, that's a little bit about how it started, where I am. I almost feel like I'm close to being settled. Like I don't know really what's next, but I think I'm just sort of seeing the dust is settling right now.
I think based on the journey you just told me about, I wouldn't be surprised at anything you do next because it's very inspirational, your journey. I always say there's zigzags, right? People, and you were open, and you wanted a purpose. And so that being open, I think, just allows you to do things as they come forward. So fascinating. And I will say the film, I would tell our listeners to just watch that film. Resonated with me because I'm from Illinois, and it was in Dixon, I think, Illinois, right? So yeah, it was fascinating. And we'll get into more because the whole fraud piece it's just interesting of how people even commit fraud. It's just fascinating to me. And you have all the different categories and so forth. So, maybe you can, because you're an expert in all of this, maybe just talk a little bit about that fraud triangle, because as CPAs, we know, but I'm not sure all our listeners are CPAs. And then talk about, is there a typical fraudster?
So the fraud triangle is something that it's sort of like the foundation of how we understand fraud. So there's 3 indices, and that is rationalization, opportunity, and pressure. And so that's what the fraud triangle is. And to your question, what's the typical fraudster? This is the disturbing answer. Anybody, like any one of us. And there's different degrees of, let's do air quotes, fraudsters. There's different degrees, from the person that may get back too much change. They know that they don't get the right amount of change and they don't disclose it. There are many fraudsters, sort of, or to the person that really outright knows how to manipulate a system within an organization to embezzle or to commit some type of financial statement fraud. I mean, there are different degrees of it. The tough part about fraud is we all think that we're ethical. Everybody thinks that they're ethical. And yet we can justify and rationalize almost anything that we want. And so that was one of the thinking about just human behavior was really one of the inspirations for writing my book, Fool Me Once, and really trying to understand how people rationalize fraud differently. So I wanted to take the fraud triangle and really explore one indice of it in a different way, which is looking at how we rationalize things. And so what I argue and what I come up with, or what I discuss in the book, is that there are 3 types of perpetrators: intentional perpetrators, accidental perpetrators, and righteous perpetrators. Now, most of us, most professional people, business owners, entrepreneurs, tax professionals, we aren't intentional perpetrators. We don't set out to defraud. When we see problems within an organization, we want to fix it. If you listen to true crime podcasts, if you watch true crime shows, movies, or anything, those are your intentional perpetrators. We're not those. Most of us don't identify with that. Where we could fall is in this accidental perpetrator category or the righteous perpetrator category. And that's where accountants, CPAs, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, we could be one of those too. Accidental perpetrators are people that are team players, people pleasers. They don't push back. Their supervisor gives them an instruction. And because you trust the system, you trust that person, you just do it. You don't push back because think about it. Most of us really never push back. It's sort of really uncomfortable. You feel stressed about it when you have to push back against someone that is of higher power than you. And so you just listen, and that can lead you in being in this category called an accidental perpetrator. Righteous perpetrators are where you could also see yourself because those are your stars, your corporate stars. They are either the rainmakers, they have the best or the most valuable, lucrative book of business, and they are so good at what they do. We don't want to bother them. What they want, they get. The rules don't apply to them. And so sometimes that star-studded person can decide, I'm going to bend this rule to help someone outside of the system. And so that's where the righteous perpetrator category falls. What I wanted people to read and hear is that any one of us could commit a crime, could commit a fraud. And, any one of us. And we can all rationalize why, I've been working really hard. It's okay for me to make these extra copies at work, or just say I came in at 8. I really came in at 10:15. We can do these little things because we can rationalize. So I really wanted people to be able to expand their mind to see there is a reason why this is a $5 trillion plus problem, and it's not all intentional perpetrators. So that was my argument. Those are my arguments. You may agree, you may disagree. If you disagree, we can leave it in the comments to this session. But that's a little bit about my thinking on the typical fraudster.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because in the nonprofit world, and I think you mentioned that in your book as well, it is difficult to approach someone when you think there's fraud too, because you trust. You trust. That's part of the world, right? And so you trust maybe sometimes too much.
Absolutely. I think the nonprofit world has a unique challenge because you often can have a volunteer person in a role that they may not be trained properly to do. And so it may be their desire, their passion to help, but maybe they shouldn't be in charge of anything financially related because they've never been trained in that way. So I think the nonprofit world, especially mission-driven organizations, it feels very uncomfortable to say, let me check behind you. Let me ask a couple of questions. But as long as we prepare the person and explain why we're doing this to protect you, to protect the organization, then I think it goes over a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. The why is always the most important part of the conversation.
It's the most important, and it's the most left out. It's the most left out. We only talk about the how and the what. And we rarely are transparent enough about the why. And I think if we could flip that a little bit, you would get buy-in so much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't take enough time. That's for sure. In the communication. So with all your research, because there's just that your book is packed full of great research, what has been the biggest surprise to you?
The biggest surprise to me as I was looking at my research and really writing the book was how much sense the categories actually made. There's categories for perpetrators, victims, and whistleblowers. And so I think when I was reading prior literature, you always feel like everything's just sort of grouped together. These are perpetrators, these are whistleblowers. But really, when I started trying to understand why it made sense to separate them out and have people understand them differently, I think that was really the first takeaway. The second takeaway was my second inspiration for the book was something that happened with the Dixon, Illinois fraud. So for those that don't know, that haven't seen the documentary, All the Queen's Horses chronicles the largest municipal fraud in U.S. history, committed by a former city comptroller by the name of Rita Crunwell. And so during COVID, Rita had requested to be released from federal prison early. Well, there was so much public outcry that she rescinded that request. Well, fast forward a year later, and her request was granted. And when she was released early, because she was sentenced to 19 years and 7 months and was released only after serving about 8, people started writing to me saying, Kelly, what are you going to do another documentary? And I'm like, absolutely not. But I felt like there was another story to share and tell and understand. So Fool Me Once carries the Dixon, Illinois fraud throughout the entire book, throughout every chapter. And so what also surprised me was how much more I had to say about the case, because when you're building a film, it's a documentary, so it's part educational, but it is also entertainment too. So you have to really marry the two in a very craftful way. But with the book, I felt like it gave me a second opportunity, a second voice to analyze the case from a different lens. So I really appreciated that more than I thought, because the story wasn't over. And so now the story's over for me, unless Rita calls me after this session and says, I want you to come visit me and I want to do an interview with you. And then I'll have my like Oprah moment. But other than that, I realized that I still had a lot to say about the Dixon fraud. Something else that surprised me just from the writing perspective is being an accountant, being a CPA, being an educator. I realized how much I enjoyed writing that way, like writing from the perspective of a non-accountant, non-auditor, non-CPA reader, and just sort of writing in plain English so that anybody could understand it. And I really appreciated how much I enjoyed that too.
Yeah, and your book is written really well with the statistics, and then there's so many stories. I think there's a story about a pothole queen or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the pothole queen. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's an
just
entrepreneur. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so interesting, and interesting, the fraud in the food business. I mean, it runs through everything, right? And I think that's important takeaway.
And I think also fraud is a part of our lives. And unfortunately, but fortunately, we have CPAs out there, accountants out there, tax professionals, bookkeepers that are always keeping fraud at the forefront of their minds and looking for it, and always leading with that level of professional skepticism that's needed to root it out. And so I think that it's one of the reasons why I think our profession is just so important. And I try my hardest to share the beautiful accounting profession to the youngest audience I possibly can, because we definitely need more people to be willing to come into the field, because we're needed. I mean, we are the backbone of business. And so if we go away, you're going to have a serious problem if there are no CPAs.
Absolutely. And that's what we keep saying. I mean, we need people to come in and have that professional skepticism. It's so important. So with that, just your thoughts on what should CPAs and financial professionals do? What should be their mindset so that they can help just make sure things are in check and make sure they find maybe discrepancies earlier and not later?
I think one of the things that as a profession we need to do better is explaining our why. And I think that for so long, we're fighting so many stereotypes that that are really strong, that accountants only do taxes, CPAs only do taxes. We wear shades and we're sitting in the back of a room. We don't interact with people. And I think that we have to really share our why in a completely different way than we do. I think the message for so long has been what we do, not why we do it. And we really need to share that more. Like when you're sitting down with a client, pitch yourself, like your value is, do you want to stay in business? Do you want to keep your employees employed? Do you want to grow? Do you want to seek investment? If those answers are yes, I am who you need. So I think like leading with that a little bit more than we do. I think historically we haven't sold ourselves in the way that we actually need to sell it. Not only to clients, but also to younger high school students, middle school students, of course, college students. But you think about one of the reasons why the legal profession, the medical profession is so popular is you see them on TV living what super glamorous lives, and then the very few times that there is a CPA mentioned in a movie, they are by no means fun looking, and so we have to get rid of that stigma. Like we need something like flashy, just to show that what we do is so valuable and you need us so much. We are your strategy consultant. We do your taxes too, but there's so much more that we do. So I think we just need a complete image overhaul.
Yes. And I've been saying that from the rooftops. So, because for me too, when I go, I'm a CPA, and when I go into rooms, they'll say, can you do my taxes or can you be on my audit committee? Well, I could do more than that if you'd ask me, but it's just fascinating.
We can do a whole lot more. My I have been teaching for a really long time, and this is my first time teaching a new class called Introduction to Business. And so I have freshmen. I have about 95 freshmen, and this class combines all the different business subjects. So I'm teaching a week on economics, a week on finance, a week on real estate, a week on hospitality, a week on marketing, and then of course a week on accounting. And what I'm able to do every week is weave accounting into every lesson because we are the backbone of all of those different professions. So it's sort of my secret way of saying you really should be an accounting major because you would understand all of these things even better, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to ask you, do we have budget to do whatever it is? And you're going to have to talk to the CPA, the CFO, the controller, whomever that person is. And that's why accounting is important. So I feel like the younger the audience, the more important explaining the why is. If you want to go work for a firm, you can. If you want to work in the nonprofit industry, you can. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you can. Like, how many fields offer that type of variety? So that's really what I've been sort of spreading my gospel about accounting for with younger students, so 6, 17, and 18-year-olds now. And I think it's working. I really do.
Thank you. Well, you're our secret weapon out there. Because we need someone at that level with the business students to really spread the message that there is accounting out there and it isn't boring, like you said, the pocket protector and all that. There's so much more that we can do.
Yeah, one of the things that I have enjoyed when I have the opportunity to share my career is to show them it's such a great foundation. I have done so many things because I'm a CPA that I just know I wouldn't be able to do if I wasn't. I mean, how many CPAs are documentary filmmakers? Like, how many of those are there? I mean, I've had a radio show, podcast, I've developed online games. I mean, you name it. And it's all based in my understanding for accounting and my passion for hoping everybody else wants to understand it too. So yeah, I'm preaching to the choir though. So this.
I do, but a lot of people are going to hear this. So I think it's a really good message out there. And we have this campaign out there. We should get you just to be featured in it. It's CPA. And so we recognize there's so many other things people are besides just the CPA. I mean, we have a race car driver. There's so many. And like you, so many different avenues and expertise. And we want to showcase that. So yeah, it's important. Keep shouting it from the rooftops, Kelly.
I will. I will.
So maybe we can just shift gears a bit. And you can talk to us since, diversity and equity inclusion is so important today. And just your thoughts on, as African-American leader, on, how others can make sure their voice is heard, how they can lead, just tips that you have and kind of challenges that you've been through.
Well, I can say that I graduated college in 1992, and the same conversation was happening in 1992 that is happening in 2023. And I don't understand why. There are other fields that have licensure that have been growing. that I think have tackled or are trying to tackle the problem of diversity in their professions. Um, I really don't know where our problem starts. I think thinking of when I chose accounting as a major, there was no 150-hour requirement. There was no requirement really to have to go to graduate school. Um, I think that the additional years in school could be cost prohibitive to some communities, specifically marginalized communities. That could have something to do with some of our pipeline issues. But I haven't had a ton of professional challenges because I've always known that if I study and pass the exam, I'm a CPA just like you're a CPA, Denise. So where I went to school, I didn't go to Harvard. Let's say I went to Harvard, and let's say you went to Yale. We both were CPAs, So I feel like what I've always appreciated about having a license or being in a field that had a license is it made things almost more on an equal footing than most, because it really that passing that exam sort of erases so much of a barrier that you might think is there. The imaginary barrier is gone once you leap over that hurdle. So that being said, I have never I've never faced in my face, now that there's probably tons of closed door problems that I don't even know that have happened to me, but in my face I have never had a ton of issue because I've been licensed, I've been credentialed, and I've always felt like my work speaks for itself. It leads first. So you will read about me before you see me. And so when you see me and you see that I'm an African American female, that's just an added bonus. But it's never been like but it's always been an to the series you were talking about. It's never been a or, it's always been an and with a smile. So I feel like my message to anybody that might be listening that might be a potential candidate of color is do it, take it, lead with it, because it's the neutralizer. Once you get your credentials, there's very little people can say or discount. And so I remember my dad always saying, make yourself as strong as the strongest person in your field. And then there's no difference between you and them. So that's sort of what I've always sort of led with. And I try to tell my students, especially my students of color, like, no one is stopping you from studying. Here's a book. There's money out there. There's scholarships available to help you. There's scholarships to help you go to school for an extra year. Now it's up to you to sit in that room and study. It is a commitment. I mean, I've never studied more in my life than I did for the CPA exam. And this is after completing a PhD. I've never studied more. but I'm glad I did it. And I didn't feel like there was any barrier against me opening a book and studying, and so I was fortunate because both my parents were educators. They could afford to send me to college. I didn't have to work during school, so I could focus, and so for people that may not have that situation, there's support. And so there's so much support out there so that you can focus too. And so I think I would love for us not to be having this conversation 5 or 10 years from now, but I'm fearful that we will. But I would love for us not to.
Agree. I love what you said about the exam being like an equalizer, right? Because if you take that, we all know we're all at the same place, right? And we're level set, right? And I think, and when you said have your work lead, I thought that was a really powerful message too.
Yeah, one thing that's nice about the accounting profession, I think in comparison to some other fields, is getting that credential. It's the level setter. I have my husband has an MBA from UNC Chapel Hill. And when I think about his experience, when he was applying to MBA programs, it was so much about where you went. You know, you needed to go to a top 15 school because if you went to a top 15 school, that impacted who was going to recruit you and everything. The CPA licensure is not like that. If you went to Harvard or you went to Montana State, you know, I'm just trying to think of a variety. If you pass the CPA exam and you're going into a firm or an organization, you're a CPA, who cares that you went to Harvard? You know, unless you know some donors that are going to give some money to the nonprofit. But other than that, in terms of your professional expertise, you have the same. And so that's what I really always liked about the field, especially being a person of color in the field, because say what you want, everyone has their own personal opinion. I'm a CPA just like you. So what are you going to say now? You know, so that was always sort of how I led and sort of embraced. So again, I never felt like I had in my face problems. I'm sure there were a lot of wars being fought on my behalf that I never even knew of. But in my face, you know, I never felt like someone came up to me and questioned my intelligence or questioned a decision, because those credentials lead, you know, and I strongly hold them everywhere I go. You know, when I even go and look at my LinkedIn profile and it has my name, comma, CPA, it just makes me smile because, you know, it makes me feel like, yes, I have a place here and I can stand and I can say something just like any male, female that is of non-color, you know. So that's how I've always felt about it.
It's great advice. That is really good advice. I wanted to, as we're getting close to the end here, just ask you, because you were named the 25 most powerful women in accounting. I mean, that's quite an honor. It honestly is. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
How would you'd be one of the best people to answer this. How would you define a leader or leadership? What are some of the characteristics that you think are critical?
I think one of the core characteristics is how many people you get to pour into. You know, like it's one of the best feelings ever is when a past student passes a CPA exam, or a past student gets promoted, or a past student gets married and is moving on and successful and happy in their life. And you know that you played a role in that. To me, that's a leader, you know, because it's more about the human side, I think, of just interacting with people. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to freshmen, because you have such an impact on their careers. And I think that a true leader draws to people that you know need them. And I guess to some degree you need them too, but like you sort of feed off each other. Yesterday was just a beautiful experience in my classes, because the first thing I said, you know, welcome to class. Raise your hand if this is your first college class ever. And 90% of both of my classes raised their hand. This was their first time in class ever in college. This is their first class that they have transitioned from high school. And I take that very seriously, because I am going to have an impact on how their entire day, their entire week, their entire quarter at DePaul will be shaped. And so to me, I hold my role as a leader in shaping their lives very, 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 very important. You know, I asked them, what are you concerned about? And one of the guys raised his hand. He's like, I'm just nervous. I don't know what to expect. And I said, you know what? That's a fair comment. I don't want you to be nervous. One of the things I do is I start the class with music. And so I go around every day, every student's going to get to pick what song we're going to play, you know, for it's the opening music. And so the one student says, well, I want to play Travis Scott. And I said, okay, I think I need to ask you, is there a clean version of Travis Scott? And he's like, oh, yeah. So the students walk in and they hear Travis Scott playing, and it's, you know, it's hip hop ish. And once a couple students said, are we in the right place? I'm like, you absolutely are. And they said, you know, hearing that, seeing you made me feel so comfortable. Like one of the things I always do first day of class, especially when I'm teaching freshmen, I wear a t-shirt. I wear a DePaul t-shirt. I wear a t-shirt. I wear sort of like a dressier jeans, but jeans, just to make them feel like it's okay. So I think understanding your role in people's lives is like step one, maybe the only step in being like a true leader, because you have to understand your impact on them. And so that to me is really important.
I love what you said. I wrote it down. I'm going to quote you because I always say it's a gift and an honor. If you can lead, it's a true gift. And when you said how many people you can pour into and know your impact, that really resonates with everybody. So that is worth $1 million.
Yeah, well,
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
I love that. I truly do. It's such a good visual for anyone. If you think about that every day, it's great. It is. And you remind, so we have this hashtag coolest profession around, CPA. I don't know if you've seen it out there, but you definitely are cool. I will say that. So
Thank you.
we'll definitely have to hashtag you. So one last question I have for you. The idea of taking personal ownership, and I think it came from Proverbs 16:51, where you said, if you get food more than once, it's your fault. Just what that, how that resonates with you.
Because I think that your job is to share. Your job is to, we always, almost always, especially if you live in the United States, and you probably get more than you need. And so I think that it's important for us to share our gifts. And so that's really what resonates with me. Like if you have something, your job is to share it with as many people as you possibly can, and so that they can benefit. So that's what that means to me when I heard you say that.
That goes right with your pouring into people, right? The sharing piece.
Yeah, what's interesting, Denise, is I've definitely reached a point in my professional career that my job is to pour. Like my job is to help build as many great CPA ready candidates, accountants. That is my job. I have poured enough. People have poured enough into me. Now it's my time to just pour and pour and pour. And so I've just had the benefit of just really having some just outstanding mentors who just pushed me, saw something in me and said, keep going, make yourself uncomfortable. And when you're comfortable, it's time to do something new. And so like just pouring. I mean, to me, like that's one of my themes of this year. I remember 2 years ago, one of my personal themes was make your own splash. Like when you think about you jump in a pool and you just make your own splash and it gets everybody wet, I was thinking, your whole idea about when you think about branding yourself is make your own splash, do things large enough that it makes so many people pay attention that you just jumped in the water. And so I think when I think about the documentary or the book or the games, I started a company called Red Flag Mania with my co-founder, Ronnie Jackson. Like all of those things were about making your own splash. So it just gets enough people wet for them to pay attention to you. Because if you don't, if you're just sort of waiting around for people to look at you, it often doesn't happen. So you got to jump in, you got to make your own splash. So that was one of my themes 2 years ago. Right now, I'm really more about like, okay, how many people can I pour into? I know a ton of people. How many people can I help get to where they're trying to get to? Sort of is my sort of personal theme.
Love that. So many good visuals today. I think of this make your own splash. And I think standing outside a pool when a kid does it and you're like, oh, I got drops on me. So it definitely penetrates through many. You've definitely made a splash here in this podcast. Thank you. It has been such a delight to talk to you. You are inspirational. And I think anyone who listens will just think about how they can do more and be more and really pour into others. So thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to talking to you again at some point.
I would love it. Thanks so much for having me and just giving me this opportunity to share. So I really appreciate it.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.